This is the continuation of Chapter 2, Part 3 of The Resurrection of People and Eternal Life From Now On Is Our Reality by Grigori Grabovoi. I'm Stephen Walters. This is not AI. I am a real human, and this is my real voice. The concrete facts of the resurrection of people given in Chapter 1 are convincing examples of such an approach. In Chapter 4, we will examine the cases of recovery from various serious diseases. All these examples eloquently illustrate the true science in action. This science does not limit itself to mere stating the fact that a person, for example, has already left this world, or that due to the advanced stage of cancer or AIDS, he has approached the end of his life. The true science, on the basis of the true knowledge of the world, as well as with the help of the principle of control, first of all obtains the necessary result. In this case, a person's salvation. If he is already gone, it brings him back into our world. Or, if he is sick, it changes in principle the course of illness. It reverses the process in his body so that the person becomes healthy again. I will give another example from my practice of applying my science. This is Grigori Grabovoi writing. In order to forecast earthquakes and other disasters, as well as to minimize their effects, I applied the formula of the universal reality and the wave synthesis theory, which I have created based on my clairvoyance. Based on these general theoretical provisions, I designed and made a special device. I would like to emphasize it. The matter is that I personally can forecast earthquakes and minimize their magnitude without the help of any devices. I personally do not need them, but since we speak about science, it is necessary to create technical devices that everybody could use. That is why I'm now talking about testing the device I have created, which could go into series production. The essence of the device operation, as well as the conducted experiments, is as follows. First of all, the device allows to forecast earthquakes. It determines geographical location of the future earthquake and estimates its magnitude. After that, the device starts minimizing the magnitude of the future earthquake and continues minimizing it until its technical resources needed for that become exhausted. And only after they have been exhausted, only then, the magnitude of the future earthquake is fixed at the level up to which it has been minimized. Naturally, the application of the device with greater resource allows for a greater effect. This method was developed based on information use of the past and future events. In the aggregate, the information of 1,000 earthquakes registered in the past was utilized, and the information of the predictive phase was confirmed. Here is the most of the letter written by Dr. Shakramanian, M.A., head of the Agency for Monitoring and Forecasting of Emergency Situations, MES of Russia, to Akhmedishian Kuznetsov, OL, president of RANS, the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences. Quote, RANS Akhmedishian Grabovoi Grigori Petrovich, applying his formula of the universal reality, as well as his wave synthesis theory for the purpose of preventative earthquake and disaster forecast, translated the crystal module of the forecast into a digital form, as evidence that proves that the above stated module allows the realization of a preventive earthquake forecast. Earthquake statistics were used, provided by the Central Experimental Methodical Expedition of the Russian Academy of Sciences Geophysical Service. Testing of the digital model of the device was conducted on past and future earthquakes. On the earthquakes of the past, by changing the model's initial parameters to the parameters prior to the beginning of earthquakes. On the earthquakes of the future, by software processing of both an electronic terrain map and extrapolation data of the Earth's surface monitoring from satellites. In the capacity of the earthquakes that actually happened in the past, data of 1,000 registered earthquakes were used for the period from January 7th, 1901 through July 4th, 1918. And remember that this letter was produced before the 2001 release of The Resurrection of People and Eternal Life From Now On Is Our Reality. In the capacity of the earthquakes of the future in July of 1999, the forecast was confirmed for all the areas where software processing of an electronic terrain map was conducted. In all the cases, the predictive phase was fully confirmed. Presently, in order to translate the crystal module parameters in a digital form into the form of a microprocessor, which is able to work for a long interval of time without additional calculations, the laser radiation characteristics from a physical source have to be translated into a digital form. End quote. Still, it is not quite clear how one can make sure that the proposed device really minimizes the earthquake magnitude, and that without it, the earthquake would be more destructive. Because we just register an earthquake magnitude, which we observe, and that's all. And what if the magnitude would be the same without the device? The answer to this question was obtained earlier when carrying out a series of underground nuclear tests. Several tests may be carried out, exploding a nuclear explosive of one and the same explosive force in the same conditions. During these tests, the device is turned off, and the magnitude of emerging destruction is registered. Then, the device is turned on, and another series of similar explosions, maintaining the same conditions, is carried out. With the help of measurements, it is determined what specific changes occur and how they occur when the device is turned on. Measurements were taken at a distance of approximately 20 kilometers away from the epicenter of the explosion. The result of these experiments is truly amazing, even having only one device turned on. The magnitude of the destruction would become virtually half the size. A more perfect and more powerful device may minimize many times the magnitude of the destruction, and the presence of several devices allows to entirely eliminate any destruction. So the device has passed a very serious testing and completely proved to be exceptionally effective. I will add that when I would join in the work myself, then virtually no destruction would take place. During the underground nuclear tests, the device was adjusted depending on the shape and size of the crystal being used. The graphs obtained served then as a calculation based in the experiments with earthquakes. Now, with respect to the device application during real earthquakes, it is known that from the epicenter of an earthquake, there is a propagation of waves, traveling in all directions due to the earth crust deformation. At some distance away from the epicenter, the size of these future deformations can be observed. Of course, the size of the deformations depends on the distance and the earthquake magnitude in the epicenter. The beginning of an earthquake can be registered with ordinary devices too. If an earthquake happened to be somewhere, the approximate size of the deformations in the observation location can be determined. However, if after the beginning of an earthquake the device was turned on in the observation location, the size of the earth crust deformations registered in that place would be several times less. Not several percents less, but times less. So given real earthquakes, my device, this is Grigori Grabovoi's device, has demonstrated an exceptional effectiveness as well. But what else is important is that this device was created based on new science, and for this precise reason, it proved to be so effective. Several words need to be said about what forecasting is based upon. My science solves the problems set before it. I mean obtaining the necessary result, but at the same time, it doesn't fixate any particular form of intermediate process. For example, if we take the wave synthesis theory that I've created, in this theory, any event is regarded as a result of the interaction of stationary areas with the dynamic ones. It is precisely out of the interaction of the stationary and the dynamic phase of reality that an event comes into existence. The theory of the wave synthesis is a consequence of my discovery of the creating area of information. This discovery was registered by the International Registration Chamber in 1997. The core of this discovery consists in that, in any information object, the area of creation of this object can always be singled out, which is the very static phase of reality. But when you perceive the object, the dynamic phase of reality emerges, which is exactly the one that creates information. Hence, it follows that all that exists in the world has been created by the collective consciousness, including the consciousness of the creator. And that is why, through cognition of the laws of consciousness received from the creator, it is possible to create any worlds and ensure eternal life. The application of this discovery ensures a concrete criterion of the future. That is what forecasting is based on. Further, my formula of the universal reality takes into consideration every person is connected with all information objects. When on the basis of this formula, a person realizes that there is a possibility of an earthquake and at the same time he is attuned to minimizing the possible effects of the natural calamity, then the magnitude of the earthquake diminishes. The same task can be accomplished by the properly constructed devices, which are based on the laws of universal interconnections and the functioning of the human consciousness. Under no circumstances do such devices destroy. Therefore, in my science, every object is connected with any other object, and all the connections in the world on the basis of consciousness can be very accurately described in precise symbols. At each element, be it, for example, a human being, a biosystem, a general system, or even just a formula, works for one general goal: building a creative, safe, secure future. And that is why in true science, a formal mechanism which carries out this goal into effect is at the same time a working tool, which affects the final state of the problem to be resolved. And all this relates to the application of my science to any phenomena, not necessarily associated only with natural disasters. The essence of my science is, therefore, that every element of it, including the formal apparatus as well, must change the world in a manner that the world should be controlled and cause no problems. So, if the discovery has been made in which the ever-accelerating expansion of the universe is stated, then in my opinion, this is Grigori Grabovoi, there should also be, by all means, the recommendations on how to make it possible for man to be able to control the phenomena and how it could be used for the benefit of all. For this purpose, I would suggest the control through a static, unchanging reality of the world. It would seem that it is only the information plane, but the aforementioned letter proves that all information planes can be manifested into reality. So, I will repeat. Comparison of my science with the orthodox science helps better understand that instead of the orientation towards stating any discovered fact, the criterion of scientific thinking must be the orientation towards obtaining the result of an entirely different level. The results that would ensure creative development of the society with control of all the stages of this development. If the true science existed at the time when radioactivity was discovered, the discovery of radioactivity would have never resulted in the creation of a nuclear weapon. Unfortunately, many orthodox science discoveries can be likened to a genie out of the bottle. The control over it becomes problematic, and this is not surprising. The initial cause of such a situation can be seen from the above example of the second Newton law. The mass of a body, its acceleration and acting force are introduced, and then these three quantities are linked into one equation. But what it is for, whether it is for destruction or for creation, is not clear at all. What's more, this question has not even been raised. Here we clearly see a sign of a complete uncertainty of a primary characteristic, what is typical for orthodox science on the whole. Any science is associated with the concepts of research and implementation of the research results. The true science at the stage of research should not destroy anything. Let's remember the example with the flower given in the introduction. And at the stage of implementation, it must ensure the improvement for all the aspects of the world. And thus, the essence of the true science may be stated as follows. The essence of science is the ability to study, the ability to control, and the ability to implement without interfering in the state of an object of study, and sometimes even without any contact with it. It is clear that these two sciences, orthodox science and true science, being so fundamentally different, must utilize a completely different mathematical apparatus. And this is really so, and we can tell right away what this fundamental difference of the apparatus of my science is. Any discovery basically creates an event. Therefore, the situation changes. The formulas must reflect this change of the situation. That is why the formulas have to be changing. My mathematics, Grigori Grabovoi's, changes simultaneously with the change of reality, and at the same time, it itself changes the reality. And it is for this precise reason that it can ensure control of the result at any stage. Ordinary mathematics, for its application, presupposes knowledge of the boundary and initial conditions, and in general, the presence of at least some available data concerning the object of research. My mathematics can operate and lead to a desired result, even in the conditions, when nothing is known about the object. It allows to always be saved, including those conditions when the properties of an aggressive environment are not known. The reason my mathematics is so effective is that it utilizes an operational principle of action, like the one being utilized by the soul. We know that it is the soul that prevents, the soul that saves. It is the soul that regulates the world. Similar is the principle of operation of the true mathematics. This is completely different mathematics. It's been created in accordance with the structure of the world. It is a part of the world, and hence, its main element is a conception of action. And the action between the science that I have presented and the former orthodox science has an explanation. And perhaps you have already guessed what it is. The key is in the difference of the levels of the state of consciousness. That's what it is. The kind of science a scientist creates is in principle determined by the level of his state of consciousness. And therefore, in actuality, the word science of itself does not say much. For of fundamental importance is the level of the state of consciousness of the one making this science. Thus, there is science consistent with an ordinary level of the state of consciousness. It is the orthodox science. There is science, which is totally different, consistent with a higher level of the state of consciousness. There is science consistent with an even higher state of consciousness, and so on. Taking all this into account, we may see that the current orthodox science cannot be anything else but what it is. It is precisely that which is consistent with an ordinary state of consciousness. And that is why I stated above that the way out of the current crisis of science and the key to its qualitative change lies in changing the state of consciousness of the people making it. What I've just said, what Grigori Grabovoi just said, concerning science, namely regarding its gradations, its levels, is true for any other human activity. And the words art or religion also require more precise definition, depending on which level of the state of consciousness this or other practice of art or religion corresponds to.